Good afternoon. My name is Tom. I come to you from the great state of Maine. I just like saying that. I thoroughly enjoy this state. It gives me so much stuff as far as food. I am a meat eater. I love to hunt deer, moose, bear, all of that. So this is going to be part 5 of 12 on the throw everything that you know about deer hunting out. As ludicrous as that sounds. But what I want to talk to today about is shooting. I know probably a lot of people aren't going to like this topic, but if you're that hunter that goes into a gun rack and pulls out his gun 2 days before the season and blows off the dust, you're that hunter that I'm talking to. As well as if you just plain want to get, a lot of guys that hunt that way never shoot a buck. And all that. So this is obviously going to take more than one part to expand on this subject. Otherwise, that'd be a long video. And I'm sitting down here by the campfire, enjoying the sunset tonight. It's setting over the swamp there, off to my left. But what I want to talk about is shooting. A lot of guys think that if you can hit a pie plate on, paper pie plate, that's the kill zone. And for a lot of years, I think that's probably what they taught and what most people believed in. I'm not that kind of hunter. I think that you should be able to shoot the balls off a squirrel at 100 yards. When you can do that, then I believe that you and your gun, you know your gun well enough to go out and deer hunt. Otherwise than that, it's probably just a walk in the woods. Sorry about that, but that's, let's get away from the walk in the woods and respect these animals and really do them justice by knowing where your gun shoots, knowing that your gun is on. How many times have you sat in a restaurant opening day and listened to that story? I saw a big buck today, but my gun was off. That's not good. That's not a good story. It doesn't make you look good as a deer hunter to hunters and non-hunters. It's just a foolish statement because that's an unprepared deer hunter. So what my point here today is I urge you to sight in your rifles ahead of time. Join a gun range. I belong to a gun range. I've been there for 30 plus years. My rifle will shoot a half-inch dot at 100 yards every time, every season. I've been sighting in rifles. I'm a reloader. I reload for my guns. And I rarely take a gun off the shelf that has been sitting there for several months and have it be dead on. I almost don't believe people if they say I took the gun off November 1st and shot it and it was dead on. I have been shooting guns for 35 years. I have been reloading. Not 35 years. I have been shooting guns since I was a young boy. As soon as my father would take me out to the shooting pit and we would shoot guns. And I've sighted in, I can't even tell you how many rifles. Plus I reload for every gun that I own. So I know where my guns shoot. I have the targets from 35 years ago when I first started to hunt with the rifle that I own now, that I deer hunt with. So it's just a little food for thought. Join a gun range, sight in your guns, and take it from there. So I'm going to shut this camera off for a minute. I see the sun is going down a little bit more, and I am going to up the exposure so that you'll be able to see me. The biggest part of the battle is shooting the deer and knocking him down. And that means placing a bullet. It's called bullet placement. Half the battle is finding the deer. 3/4 of the battle is shooting the deer and actually being able to bring your deer home. And some of the greatest advice that I got was as a young man from an experienced deer hunter. What he told me to do back then is, look for your deer, find him and all that. And what he meant by that is you got these shooting lanes, and everybody knows what a shooting lane is, so I don't really got to get into that too awful much. At least I hope I don't, if you call yourself a deer hunter. But anyways, in that first window, that first shooting lane, you make sure it's a shooting buck. You make sure it's a good-sized buck. You make sure it's a shootable buck. And in this state, it's bucks only, unless you got a permit for does. And I wouldn't shoot a doe at this point in my life anyways. The does give me baby bucks. So keep that in mind the next time you want to pop a doe. But anyways, this guy, getting back to the shooting lane. So on your second lane, you might get a shot. If you don't, you always got a third lane for backup. So you spot him in that first lane. He's a shootable buck. You try to shoot him in the next lane. And if you don't, then hopefully you got another lane over here to the left or to the right that will that you can take your buck in. So that was the first really good sound information that I got as a young hunter. The second thing was from a different hunter, an old fella. He's long passed away now. But he said, and this was really good advice, so that's why I want to pass it on. He said to me, he says, once you've seen that buck, he says, forget about the whole deer. He said, look for that little brown spot. That's the kill spot. You find that little brown spot that you're going to shoot, and that's the one that then you forget about the rest of the deer. Forget about what's on his head for headgear. He said, you got all kinds of time back at camp or back at home to look at that headgear. Right now, you got to put a bullet on that little brown spot that will knock that buck down. And that was probably some of the best advice that an old fella had given me as a young man for hunting. Because once I got that in my head, there was no more of that looking at the whole deer. You look at that deer too long and you're not going to get a shot. That's what the problem is. So you find that kill zone, you find that little tiny brown spot, which for me is 1 inch. I want a good solid hit. Like I said earlier in this video, you should be able to shoot the balls off a squirrel at 100 yards. Well, Mama's not going to like that too much. But I have always thought that was about the way your guns should be. So I'll be back in just a second. I need to throw a log on this fire, and we will continue on this. I have another little portion of this that has to do with something else that helped me in the ability to knock down a buck. All right, now, and another thing that you can do to improve your accuracy on shooting a deer, because remember, if you're taking a shot at a running deer, you never had a shot in the first place. You've already spooked that deer. That's a done deal. So don't send lead that way. All that does is maybe wound him, maybe whatever. But 9 times out of 10, you're never going to come close to making that shot because your shot has long gone past. But one of the things that you can do to improve your ability to shoot deer is take up rabbit hunting. What? Take up rabbit hunting? Well, I took up rabbit hunting when I was 22 years old. And what that did for me as a deer hunter is shooting rabbits. Me and my hunting buddy there, we shot on average of 80 rabbits to 120 rabbits per year. And how we kept track of them rabbits is we'd cut off a foot and we'd throw it in a bag and we'd put that in the dog box that was behind the snowmobile. And then at the end of March, we would count up the feet, and that's how we do. We took one foot off each rabbit. You ever heard of Lucky Rabbit's foot? Well, that bag was 100 unlucky rabbits, so I don't really think that a Lucky Rabbit's foot is that good. So, but you can take for whatever you want. But anyways, hear me out on this rabbit hunting. The rabbits come through the woods, 20 miles an hour at least, when they're on a dead run in front of a beagle. So it gives you a lot of practice on shooting that rabbit, because it's the same technology. It's the same tip. It's the same whatever you want to call it. The rabbit comes through. You need to find that window to find out where the rabbit's coming from, but also to make sure it's a rabbit and not your beagle. So you comes through that first window, you know what you're looking at. By the time you get to the second window, hopefully you can make that shot. And you're always looking ahead of that rabbit to see where the next shot's going to be in case you miss him. So it gives you instant practice to put towards your deer hunting. And after I hunted rabbits for a few years, I noticed that in my deer hunting, I was able to shoot many more deer. Kind of think that through there a little bit. And if you want to, you don't have to have a beagle to chase a rabbit in hunting. You can go out and kick up a brush pile, especially in this state. You can go through a thicket, or you can have your buddy walk through a thicket, and out the rabbits will come. We've done that. I couldn't tell you how many times. We had one spot up north where we had one guy go in the front of the thicket, and two of us went out the back, and we shot 5 rabbits before the dogs ever opened their mouth. So sometimes these thickets up here are loaded with rabbits, and they're very good to eat. So, but think about that when it comes to your deer hunting. That's one more way to better your odds in knocking down a buck. So I think that'll wrap this up. I don't know. I'm going to just shut the camera off here for a second, and I'm going to give this a little bit more thought. But I think this will wrap up becoming a better shooter. That's probably one of the best tips that I can give you as far as being able to knock down a buck and put a buck on your meat pole. That's the whole point in this series. I will be taking you out in the woods later on because I do this month by month. I am in the woods 11 months, and then I have my 12th month is for my deer hunting. So I will be bringing you in the woods with me. I'm not a whole lot into tracking and all that stuff. I just don't. I will get into that later on. I mean, there's a couple other things we're going to hit. But right now, I'm just kind of hitting the basics because the whole point in this series is I want you to be able to put a buck on your meat pole every year. And if not, at worst, every other year, depending on how much time you put into your scouting and all that. I realize that my method takes time, it takes work, but I enjoy being in the woods. So it's not, to me, it's not a lot of work, it's not a lot of issue. It's just part of what I've done. I've always done it that way. It gives me an excuse to get into the woods. Whether it be ice fishing or whether it be going out and scouting and having lunch out in the swamp or whatever, this is a really, really good way to up your deer odds for putting a deer in your freezer. So I'll be back in a minute. This is going to wrap up this part 5 of 12 on the shooting. Making yourself be a better shot. And I just want to wrap this up with deer and bears and all that. They're magnificent animals, and we owe it to them as a sportsman and as a hunter to do our very, very best to not only look good to the general public, but also to ourselves when it comes to shooting deers. Be respectful of them. And try not to wound them if you don't have to. I have shot several deer. Every single one of them I have shot with one bullet. I've shot caribou. I've shot bear. My bear, the same deal, one bullet. You don't need to send a lot of lead downrange to get a deer. So keep that in mind. And the other thing, while we're here, I know deer rifles have changed since I got into it. Bolt action was the gun to own. It was the most accurate. That hasn't changed. These high-powered military rifles, they weren't made for deer hunting. They were made for military uses. So you would do yourself a big favor to get back to a bolt action rifle when it comes to deer hunting. You will find the accuracy downrange will far surpass anything that you're doing with that military rifle. So just one little tidbit out there as far as guns go. I realize I am old school, but most of my rifles I don't own any automatics. I don't even own semi-automatics. To me, they're a poor excuse of a rifle. But if that upsets you, then that's just the way it's going to have to be. But I use a bolt action rifle. I also use a pump action rifle. And the only reason for the pump is I bought it 35 years ago. I like the gun. It shoots really nice. I have been shooting it for 35 years, so I know exactly where it shoots. But think about that on next time you pick out a deer rifle. Go pick yourself out a bolt action and take that to the range, and you will be impressed with how it shoots. So you have a great evening, and I will see you on the next video.